Elon Musk leaves DOGE and blasts the big, beautiful bill. The CCP threat to world civilization. How do Europeans view Americans? This is Dr. David D. Shine for Saving America with my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business. The news is coming in fast and furious. Let's see what I can take on this week. Elon Musk leaves DOGE and blasts the big, beautiful bill. To me, Elon Musk is not just reportedly the richest man in the world, he's also one of the most interesting. My understanding is that he came into Tesla as to making billions with the startup of several companies, including what's known as PayPal. The company was struggling and he made Tesla and his own name famous. Many are also familiar with SpaceX, which includes the Starlink satellite Wi-Fi system. And of course, SpaceX recently rescued a couple astronauts who have been stranded by a Boeing satellite. So kind of an interesting situation there. Less well known is his work with Neuralink, which is providing an exciting opportunity perhaps for people with paralysis. He was not very visible in politics, but was considered a Democrat up to his strange and botched purchase of Twitter, which he renamed X. About a year later, he began to openly and strongly support Trump's presidential campaign. He then was the leader and figurehead of DOGE. His fortune seemed to have faded with his political involvement. In fact, the disdain for him was far out of proportion to the big victory that Trump won in November. Elon left DOGE on May 30th and subsequently set off a media bomb with his strong criticism of Trump's big, beautiful bill. He called it a disgusting abomination. That's a quote. The media has gone crazy on the split between Trump and Musk. I can see both sides of this breach. Trump's tax cuts helped stimulate the economy before the COVID-19 disaster. Absent this pending bill, those tax cuts will go away. That will crush the Trump agenda and many middle-income taxpayers, including yours truly. At the same time, Musk has put his heart into cutting the government waste. This is critical since the federal debt is crushing future generations and the end to wasteful spending must happen. The proposed bill does increase the federal deficit based on my observations about $2.5 trillion. That is terrible. I'm hoping the Senate will cut some of that pork. In the interest of full disclosure, my financial advisor had me make a small investment in Tesla shares about 3 years ago. They have been underwater most of the time since then. So Elon returning to Tesla is a positive for me as well as other shareholders. I anticipate his other business interests are happy to have him back on board as well. American shame, Boulder, Colorado terrorist attack. I am saddened to learn of the terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado. I was there to speak at seminars in 2004 and 2005. Ironically, it's one of the most peaceful and liberal places in America. So it was the last place that anyone would expected an illegal alien to firebomb a peaceful protest calling for the release of the hostages held by Hamas. Not all protesters were Jewish. At last report, 15 were injured, including a dog, 2 of them critically. One of the injured was a Holocaust survivor. The terrorist is in custody. He has shown no remorse for the attack. Not sure how he expects to support his 5 children while he is likely to spend the rest of his pathetic life in prison. I prefer that he get the death penalty, but that's not likely to happen. I call again, not just for the end of anti-Semitism, but for the end of the recent push to persecute religious persons. I caution Catholics and other religions that if the current attempt to stifle the Jews is successful, they will be next. Further, the rhetoric of violence needs to be quashed, and the famous call for peace and love, folks, needs to return. How do Europeans view Americans? After about 3 weeks in Europe, many have asked me to comment on how the Europeans see the Americans. First, my observations are personal. I cannot speak for the entirety of the European people, just as I do not speak for all Americans. I am a professional interviewer and as a frequent traveler, try never to be the ugly American. So many people will speak with me. Second, I was in Southwest France, several big cities in Belgium, and then in Amsterdam and nearby cities nearby in the Netherlands. I had very little feedback while in France. On the other hand, in Brussels, I had a private 90-minute discussion with two representatives from the European Union. This was truly a unique opportunity. Their positions were similar. One was from Austria, the other was from Germany. They like America and Americans, not so much Trump. I found it interesting that little was said about the failed Biden presidency, almost like it never happened. Their position makes sense since the EU must have American financial and military support. However, Trump in his first term, and has returned to that point again, is insisting that the EU countries start to pay their fair share to NATO and help Ukraine. Nobody likes being called deadbeats, after all. The locals in both Belgium and the Netherlands learned English along with their native languages. In fact, most spoke English, American-sounding English, smoothly like they grew up in the US. While the liberation of those countries in World War II was 80 years ago, they still credit the Brits and the Americans for coming to their aid to expel the Nazis. No peace yet for Ukraine, Russia. Speaking of Ukraine, the slaughter continues. Putin continues to send record numbers of drones into civilian areas of the Ukraine. He is a war criminal at the highest level. I call for every country on earth to declare him persona non grata. A recent report puts total deaths at an incredible 1.4 million for both sides. Ukraine has recently launched two powerful strikes. In an attack over a year in the making, they sent drones into Russia and may have destroyed 40 bombers, or about a third of the Russian fleet. A couple days later, a bomb destroyed the critical highway from Russia into occupied Crimea. Deranged Putin claims he must now retaliate for these latest attacks. But hey, who's been bombing civilians and power plants for 3 years? The CCP threat to world civilization. China is a threat not just to the USA and its allies, it's a threat to world civilization. No matter what your political affiliation, is crucial that the world unite against the crazed CCP leadership. I can speak from experience that it's not the Chinese people. The only reason that Xi and the CCP can get away with this is that the culture is one of little political involvement. And in the 80s and 90s, as the country drifted capitalist, the general population did well. Xi has deliberately tried to walk that success back and restored the failed Marxism of his predecessors. Not only is this ridiculous on its face, it's likely to lead to the end of civilization as we know it on Earth. For proof of this, the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic tied to a lab in Wuhan, China. Millions died and the financial losses were substantial. Fortunately, it appears that China, which cannot be trusted to tell the truth about anything, has lost more people and more wealth than any other country due to this ridiculous leak that happened at that lab. Over the last 5 years, there have been repeated reports of spying by Chinese or for the CCP. I have called on much more dramatic penalties for those spies. Maybe that will happen under the Trump administration. Hasn't happened so far. The very latest is a biological threat stopped at the border by the FBI. A reported Chinese scholar at the University of Michigan was caught trying to smuggle in a biological pathogen. Apparently, this happened months ago, but we're just now finding out about it. This could have been used as a terrorism weapon to destroy food crops. The woman and her boyfriend were arrested. However, I believe in the report it says the boyfriend has now gone back to China. Why is he not in a jail cell? She's been found to have sworn her allegiance to the CCP. A week earlier, another Chinese University of Michigan student was charged with illegally voting in the 2024 election, and he allegedly has already fled the U.S. Why was he allowed to escape? A side note is that last October, 5 UMich graduates from China who were found on a military facility in northern Michigan in 2023 during a U.S. National Guard training exercise with members of the Taiwanese military. For some reason, the 5 were released and have all returned to China. Why are they not in jail cells? Again, time for long prison sentences and the death penalty applied in the most serious cases. We Americans must demand that our law enforcement rise to the high threat level we are facing. America and its allies must return to the pre-1970 approach of sealing off China until its financial failures allow the sensible people over there to take over. Continuing at the bad news is the rambling nuclear talks with Iran. Enough is enough. They are not going to make a deal since these are the most deranged of the three major threats to America. The longer this goes on, the more nuclear material they can assemble. Time to bomb, bomb, bomb Iran, as one popular song from 1980 by Vince Vance and the Valiants suggested. Only hit military and research facilities. The civilians in Iran have had enough. They are already prepared to rise up and save their country. Back in the Obama administration, there were clear-cut paths to which this were ignored. Let's provide financial and military support to the people to rid themselves of this cancer on their country and support a democracy there. As a longtime conservative and a professional educator, I love it when the liberals paint themselves into a corner. I was inspired by a story by David Strom in Hot Air titled, "After Ruining Education by Dropping Phonics, Liberals Discover Phonics Work." As a parent and grandparent, I cannot imagine teaching English to little children without sounding out the words. That's how we all learned, right? Well, that is until the liberals took over education. Ignoring the way we humans learn language and to speak it, the push has been underway to teach differently. Not surprisingly, we've had massive national failure across our early grades. Strom's article claims that phonics are making a comeback, however. He contrasts the success over the last decade in Mississippi with the failure in California. He explained, for decades, most school districts in California have been devoted to a different approach called whole language or balanced literacy, built on the belief that children naturally learn to read without being taught how to sound out words. Hopefully, the return of phonics will spread quickly and allow us college professors to start working with students who can speak, read, and write coherently. Otherwise, the remedial education at the high expense of a college education will continue. This is Dr. David D. Shine. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.